Mydworth Mysteries, Episode 10, City Heat. Written by Matthew Costello and Neil Richards. Narrated by Nathaniel Parker. Chapter 1. A Night Out in the Village. Teddy Crowther tossed back the dregs of his old-fashioned, slammed the glass down on the table and gazed out across the crowded bar. Chumley's. A speakeasy, and, for Teddy, the closest place to heaven on earth. Tonight the place was heaving, every table packed. The small band in the corner was smashing the hell out of an Irving Berlin number. And what served as a dance floor was so crammed with gyrating bodies it looked like if one fell, they'd all go. The bar, meanwhile, was just a blur of waving arms, white-aproned barmen sweating in the heat, sliding glasses, martini shakers, bottles of rye. And Teddy thought, word is there's more than 20,000 speakeasies in New York. If they're all like this at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday night, who the hell's keeping the city running? He looked around for Zoe. Gorgeous, cropped-haired, red-lipped, long-legged Zoe. In that short, shimmering green silk dress that, well, kind of took your breath away. Yep, and there she was, as usual, bang in the center of the crowd, the music pounding in this cramped subterranean space, the eager lounge lizards, always with a snappy line, each one thinking that, just maybe, Zoe was just another dumb Dora. A pushover. Fat chance, fellas, thought Teddy, smiling, because he knew Zoe, one smart cookie too, only had eyes for him, just like for him. She was the only gal in town. Like she was mind-reading, right now, she looked across to his table, gave him a wave, mouthed a kiss with those perfect bow-shaped lips. He held up her empty glass and made a gesture, fancy another? But instead of nodding as he expected, she slipped away from the dance floor, came right over and flopped onto his lap. Sweetie pie, it's late, she said, after she'd given him a long, very long, kiss. Still feels early to me, said Teddy. Hey, some of the gang are heading uptown. Word is it's all happening at the pension. Night's young. Let's party on. Oh, don't tempt me, baby, said Zoe, touching his lips with her finger, then giving him another kiss. Her scent divine. But you know I can't stay out and play tonight. Then Teddy remembered. Zoe had a casting at 9 a.m. sharp for a big new Broadway show. Your recall, he said. Sorry, I completely forgot. How can you forgive me? I'm an idiot. No, not an idiot, said Zoe. You're my precious teddy bear. My spangly, shining knight. He laughed and kissed her again. Then he put his arms around her waist and lifted her up onto her feet and stood. Exactly, and this shining knight's taking you home for your beauty sleep, right now, he said. Oh, think I might need more than a little beauty sleep, said Zoe coyly into his ear, her voice soft, teasing. That is, if I'm going to really impress tomorrow. Well, okay then. What are we waiting for? Said Teddy, and arm in arm they headed for the stairs that led up and out of the bar. Out on Bedford Street, the nondescript, unmarked door to Chumley's shut tight behind them. Teddy could barely hear the sound of the band deep below the sidewalk. He waited while Zoe leaned against a rail to put her heels back on. As you were saying, my place or yours, he said, though he knew the answer. Zoe's rooms, quaint but little more than a lodging house. Whereas his own apartment, courtesy of Daddy, Not only had a roof you could sit out on to catch a breeze, but even that rare luxury, air conditioning. The heat, even this late, unrelenting. A brutally steamy New York summer night. Soon to get for Teddy and Zoe, hopefully, even steamier. "Your place, silly," said Zoe, stepping over. "Hope you remembered to fill your icebox. I want ice, lots of it, and not just in the drinks." She giggled, then slipped her arm through his, and together they walked up Bedford, heading for 9th Avenue, and then home. As they walked, her head resting on his shoulder, they passed the occasional late-night souls, sitting out on their stoops, cigarettes glowing, conversations soft, lingering outside, the best they could do to cool down. But otherwise, Greenwich Village was deserted. Most everyone trying to sleep, even if the heat of the day had dropped only a couple of degrees. Teddy could see windows wide open, all along the dark streets, people desperate to suck the cooler night air into stifling apartments, fans perched on the windowsills doing their best. This last week had been a real sizzler. Kids across the city playing in the hydrants, ice trucks working non-stop, and no let-up to the heatwave in sight. "You happy?" he said, his head nuzzled in Zoe's hair. "Mm-hmm," she said. "Swell, teddy bear, just swell." He smiled to himself, trying to stop his mind wandering to thoughts of the future. College, working for Daddy, and then the even darker thoughts, debts, loans, money coming in, money owed. A lot of questions, and not an answer in sight. For instance, how was he going to deal with this morning's letter from the bank telling him that he really must put his finances in order by the end of the month, or else? Or what were the bookies going to do when they realized he'd, slightly overreached himself at the track on Saturday? Oh, and the tables the other night. Ouch. When those loans from the sharks come due, you better have the money, or else. No, those kind of thoughts must be reserved for daytime, not for nights with Zoe. "Nearly home," he said, as they crossed Hudson. The streets still quiet, though now with lines of cars parked on either side, people starting to spill out of other speakeasies, the night, for most, finally ending. They turned into his own street, his apartment building at the far end. Ahead he saw a couple of guys on the sidewalk, lounging against a sedan, chatting, voices low, friends coming home from a good night out, maybe. As Teddy and Zoe neared them, the two men stepped to one side of the sidewalk to let them pass. "Nice evening," said Teddy, as he ushered Zoe through the gap left by the men. Not concerned, just being good-mannered. "Sure is," said one of the men. Then, just as they were past, the other man held up a cigarette and said, "Hey, you got a light, pal?" Teddy stopped, turned. "Sure," he said, reaching into his pocket for his lighter. The man took a step closer, put the cigarette in his mouth. Teddy gave his lighter a strike, and in the flame, he saw the man's face more clearly. A scar on one cheek, the eyes hard, like they were thinking about something, and it wasn't about having a smoke. Cold eyes. And suddenly Teddy, stopping, felt he had made a very, very bad mistake. A jolt of fear ran through his blood, made his heart race, and he started to turn to be closer to Zoe, to step back, away from these two men, who no longer looked like innocent partygoers. But as he did, he felt a hand come from nowhere and grip one of his arms, twisting it, wrenching it up behind his back, the muscles surely tearing. As a leg somehow flipped him over at the same time, and he crashed, face first, hard into the side of the car, with a terrible crack from his teeth, his mouth filling instantly with blood. "Zoe!" he shouted, hoping she was already running. But she was still there, and he heard her scream as one of the guys pushed her to the ground. He wanted to help her, but everything was happening too fast. The door of the sedan swung open, and a heavy hood was slipped over his head and tied with a drawstring. So tight around his neck he could hardly breathe. He felt himself being dragged and shoved into the back seat of the car. Then the engine roared, the door shut, one of the guys piled in on top of him, and he felt the car pull away from the curb, the tires screeching. And outside, Zoe's screams piercing the night air.